Welcome to worship with the Unitarian Universalist community of Charlotte. I'm Eve Stevens. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm one of the ministers of this community. And I am grateful once again to my neighbor, Charlotte-based artist Amy Hart, for use of her grounds to film this service. If you are new to this community, thank you for spending part of your morning here with us. And I hope that you'll join us for virtual coffee hour following the service on Zoom. It's an opportunity to get to know some of the people in our congregation in a small group setting. You can look for the Sunday schedule post on our public Facebook page or look up the calendar on our website to find the link. If you'd like to learn more about us or want to connect with me or my colleague Jay Leach, get in touch with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. You can email Kelly at Kelly, Kelly, at uuccharlotte.org. Welcome members, welcome guests. I invite you now to greet one another in the comment section beneath our Sunday welcome post on our public Facebook page. In 2014, two poets, Amy Nesukamata-Tathil and Ross Gay, who both love to garden, started a correspondence of handwritten letters. Through each season, they traded poems and stamped envelopes describing what was unfolding in their gardens and in their lives. Amy Nesukamata-Tathil carefully cultivating her patch of flowers in Fredonia, New York, near the banks of Lake Erie. Ross Gay tending to his fruit and vegetable garden in the clay soil of Bloomington, Indiana. as a way of introducing a sample of their poetic correspondence in Orion magazine, Ross Gay writes, "It is our hope that some of the pleasure and anxiety of tending these gardens, which is to say, tending to ourselves, our relationships, our earth, comes through in these poems." He continues, "There's bounty, yes, but there's loss and sorrow too, like a garden, like a life." May this light we now kindle in celebration of our liberating faith nurture the seeds of compassion and courage growing deep within each of us.
Good morning. I'm Tom Nunnenkamp. Connection is the word that best describes my relationship with our garden maple walk. While the other benefits like beauty, at one with nature, etc., have surely been there, for me, those were just givens. But COVID added this other dimension, connection. not just connection with the earth and nature, but human connection in a time that many were experiencing little of that. When the parks and greenways were closed last spring, a neighbor posted information about Maple Walk, our garden, on the neighborhood blog next door. Seldom a day goes by that we don't encounter individuals wandering through our over 1,600 feet of path, or a family bringing their children to visit our rescue bunnies in the Taj Mahal. So it's with much gratitude and a recognition of my white privilege that while much of the society has felt very isolated, I've been able to interact with people on a daily basis without having to leave my home.
Hi, I'm Kendra Dixon. Gardening hasn't always been a part of my life. In fact, for most of my life, it's been something that I plan to spend time doing one of these days. It's only been in the past several years that I've gradually been able to make it a priority in my life, changing the way that I look at the world in the process. The more I observe my plants, the more I feel the need to learn about the soil, about the insects that pollinate my plants, and about the fungi that decompose my plants and release the nutrients back into the soil. All of a sudden, I'm aware of the world around me like never before. When I hike, I'm conscious of the networks of mycelium just millimeters beneath my feet, a web of fungi connecting all the trees around me. When I walk out in the morning to water my vegetable garden, I pause and listen to the birds and try to learn their calls and recognize the various species making a home in the same space that I inhabit. Gardening has sparked a curiosity about the natural world in me, and I'm very grateful for that gift.
While gardening, poet Rina Espaillat strikes up conversation with the roots and the weeds she comes across. And then through the rhythm of digging and weeding, she finds she's communing with her forebears as well. The women who came before her who knew this same rhythm of seasons of planting. Here's a poem by Rina Espaillat called Gardening. My hands are in the dirt, 10 fingernails black with it, and half worms come up to writhe in the hole I've just made with a rusty trowel. I nudge them out, drop them where shade is deeper and moister. Nothing to be alarmed about, I tell them. There's enough dirt for us all. Roots from our neighbor's greedy birch, caught on the wrong side of the fence, drop their booty of damp clumps from black, sweaty little fists. I pat them back under, dig a new hole. If I don't see you, I don't know you're there, I tell them. Do as much for me someday. With my hands in this dirt, I'm on good terms with everything but weeds. Polite even with them. Sorry, I tell the creamy fuzz bursting from the dandelion's pursed lip. Nothing personal, you're just out of place. And then I pry it loose like a bad habit. Any dirt at all will lead you into every grave you can think of. With a stick long enough and time enough for digging. I reach down deep for my mother's mother. Show her tomato buds, stroke her to sleep, promising her at last enough to eat. And listen, my father's mother, midwife and singer of poems, that champion laugher whose fat roses scented my early days. Under my nails, wherever I dig, still laughing. I tell her I sing roses too, my hands in dirt, where she lives forever. The Spanish painter and sculptor, Joan Miro, once spoke at length with a prominent French art critic, revealing the intimate ins and outs of his creative process. Miro says, "If a canvas remains in progress for years in my studio, that doesn't worry me. On the contrary, when I'm rich in canvases which have a point of departure vital enough to set off a series of rhythms, a new life, new living things, I'm happy." He continues, "I consider my studio as a kitchen garden. Leaves must be cut so that the fruit can grow. At the right moment, I must prune. I work like a gardener. Things come slowly, things follow their natural course. They grow, they ripen. I must graft, I must water. I am patient as a slow ripening goes on in my mind. To bring something beautiful into the world, to partner with creation, to contribute your energy to the life that's bigger than your own. That kind of creative labor requires effort, attention, and patience. In her essay, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, Alice Walker reflects on the inborn creativity of Black women and mourns how many more Black women over the generations might have been poets, painters, sculptors, singers, if the energy required to simply survive had not consumed so much of their life force. Of her own mother, Walker says, "No song or poem will bear my mother's name. She spent too much time harvesting cotton for too little pay, raising her children, cooking meals, and stitching quilts for her large family in the winters. And yet Walker tells a story of realizing one day that her mother has been an artist all along, a creator of beauty and new life in the world around her. Walker writes, "Whatever rocky soil my mother landed on, she turned into a garden so brilliant with colors, so original in its design, so magnificent with life and creativity." In all her weariness, somehow each day, Walker's mother always found time to water her flowers, to lay out new beds, divide clumps of bulbs, dig, uproot and replant roses or prune branches. She gave this effort her attention and patience because in return, her creative labor brought her more alive. Walker describes watching her mother work in the soil. She is involved in work her soul must have, ordering the universe in the image of her personal conception of beauty. Her face as she prepares the art that is her gift is a legacy of respect she leaves to me for all that illuminates and cherishes life.
This is Elaine Camp, and I'm a gardener by choice. One of the first things I did when I retired was take the Master Gardener program, and I've just always had a love for plants. My grandfather grew roses, and I was always fascinated. And as soon as I was able to have a yard of my own, I began planting petunias my first try. It was 1976, and I planted red, white, and blue petunias, and they were wonderful. But my spring garden this year is absolutely spectacular, and I'm so proud of it and happy with it. And I try to plan things so there's something going on all times of the year. So right now we've got spring. Pretty soon the summer things will come out. This is a lilac bush, which is rather unusual for Charlotte, but it just finished blooming, and it has a nice light fragrance. And I have Confederate jasmine on this trellis, which is beautiful. And this is a showstopper too. My ferns, my hostas, and my Japanese maple. So this is my happy place. And I've planted a little rock garden over there. You can't really see it, but that's just an experiment. Things come and go. It's a work in progress. And that's what I like about gardening.
The earth in springtime knows no shame. Poet Camille T. Dungy writes, "Who is more wanton than the dancing crepe myrtle? Is she ashamed? Why, even the dogwood, that righteous tree of God's, is full of lust, exploding into brightness every spring." Amy Nezhukumata Thiel writes, "I want to kiss each crumble of sun-baked earth as my sons welcome irises and drunk ants whirl rush over each juicy peony bud." And Ross Gay says, "The bumblebees furrow the pursed and purple lips of false indigo for the dusty blush, and I want to go make a hallelujah of my own simple body." As many evenings as we can, My family and I go for a walk around our neighborhood. We have a comfortable, well-worn loop. We've been walking that same loop for a year now. And we know what each house, each yard looks like through the seasons. Since the first daffodil popped up in March, I have been amazed all spring by the weeding, watering, and pruning my neighbors have done. Whatever the demands of their lives, at some point, they each seem to have decided that it was worthwhile to get down in the dirt, to dig, and plant beautiful things. One neighbor built a trellis so that these lush, unapologetic purple flowers could dance their way up the length of the mailbox. Another yard has white, pink, red, and purple azaleas, loud colors that pop like fireworks as they come in view. Another neighbor hosts the friendly faces of pansies gathered together and daylilies like colorful party hats. I so admire people who invest their time and energy to grow flowers in their yards, giving this gift of fragrance and beauty to bees and passersby like me. I know they know, even as they plant, what inevitably happens each year. Those unapologetic purple flowers dancing their way up the mailbox will wilt. The azalea blossoms, for all their boldness now, will fizzle out. The pansies and the daylilies will curl at the edges and droop like the morning after a party. Yet, each year I imagine, for the good of us all, with a necessary measure of defiance, gardeners must say to themselves, yes, but first there will be color. There will be abundance. Yes, but first there will be celebration. My aunt and I didn't always see eye to eye, yet somehow we talked on the phone a lot. We both loved to talk at length, so for the most part, it worked out. In the course of one of those lengthy conversations, I started berating myself for all the things I'd like to be doing that I never make time for, the endless things on my to-do list I never get done. Finally, I got to the end saying, I even have this stack of watercolor paper shaped like postcards and a set of these nice paints I got at a swanky artist supply store. And I constantly delude myself into thinking that I'll just sit down one week to paint something clumsy and colorful for a friend and drop it in the mail just to say, hey, I'm thinking of you. But of course, I never do. My aunt listened and then said, well, this is not your season of stillness. This is not your season of stillness. She'd been doing a Bible study with some friends from her church. They were exploring life as a series of seasons, taking that beautiful scripture from the Hebrew Bible as a framework. For everything, there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. Each evening they gathered, my aunt and her friends studied the Bible as a kind of spiritual almanac, gaining insight into how one could respond with grace to life's weather patterns. You're not in a season of stillness, she told me. You're in a season of noise and busyness and raising small children. You have to learn to accept what will grow in this season and what won't. It's true. Despite even the most determined efforts where I live, blueberries just won't grow in January. And then there are other months, other seasons, when fruit is everywhere, ripening effortlessly in the sun. How wise we would be to accept the season we're in, to make peace with what cannot grow under these conditions, allowing for times of dormancy and rest. How wise we would be to enjoy whatever form abundance is taking now. How wise we would be wanting what we have.
Little brown butterflies kiss the tulips, and the sun is like a toy balloon. There are get up in the morning glories in the golden afternoon. There are dizzy daffodils on the hillside, strings of violets are all in tune. Tiger lilies love the dandelions in the golden afternoon. There are dog and caterpillars and a copper centipede, where the lazy daisies love the very peaceful life they lead. You can learn a lot of things from the flowers, for especially in the month of June, there's a wealth of happiness
Good morning, my name is Donna Feely. My family and I have been members at the UUCC for about 12 years now. My love of gardening and of growing things has really been a lifelong passion. As a young child, I was always fascinated by plants. And as a young adult, I filled my apartment with them. When my husband Tom and I purchased our first home in Massachusetts, and then later on when we moved our family to South Carolina, creating those garden spaces around our home was just a priority for me, and I really did get to work. I've been inspired in so many ways through gardening. The ability to connect with nature and also to connect with myself. It allows me the space to really let my imagination run wild and to indulge that creative side of me. It's where I get my sunshine, my fresh air, and my exercise. And the hard work that goes into gardening, those spaces that you create, those places that you can turn to in challenging times for comfort, is really the best kind of therapy. It's also a classroom, and it's the classroom where my children grew up. A garden teaches you to be curious and to really find appreciation for the natural world. It's also been the way I've connected with others, either through our shared passion for gardening or through sharing the bounty. I get such joy when I can share a cutting from my own garden that opens up a whole new world of possibilities for somebody. And it inspires them to create a beautiful space of their own, a space that didn't exist prior. It's really transformative and magical. For me, a garden is all about connections, both personal and shared.
I invite you to deepen your breath, to close your eyes, and become aware of anywhere there's tension in your body. Wherever you sense it, your neck, your shoulders, your hands, breathe into that tension until it releases. For this community, for all the individual lives that come together to make this community, our wish for one another is abundance. And in that spirit, I offer you these words by Caroline Finkelstein. You think it's easy to want plenty and the mess that comes with it? Of course it is, when it isn't complicated with a wish for order. For instance, I wanted the rakes in an obedient row. I wanted even the dirt subdued, planted in lines. One small blue flower was enough to surprise me. The yellow anthers made a sun and mimic sky. And it wasn't enough to stay tidy when desire called out, coupled with vertigo, for everything flamboyant, everything luscious. At dusk, you enter the garden with precise hands, and a body of knowledge. Amen.
Good morning. I'm Roger Coates, a member for about 20 years here. I'm not much of a gardener, but I had a good experience with a weekend farm in my early professional life, pictured here. And I suspect the lessons that I learned from this farming experience are not unlike those gained by our urban gardeners. In 1970, while working in D.C., I joined a friend to buy an abandoned farm on the Mason-Dixon line as a weekend respite from challenging professional work. The farm is pretty run down, but we were energetic, and the neighboring farmer proved both wise and friendly. So we set about an informal share farm arrangement. Basically, the neighbor was the brains and we were the brawn. The initial challenge after repairing fences was to improve the fertility of the soil for crops. We preferred natural methods, lime and cow manure, with a thin shale-based soil. So we bought several cows to graze with some of the animals brought over by this neighbor. We were flexible with our plans. We needed to see what worked in our setting, just as any gardener does. Over the course of several years, we settled into a rotation that did work. Consistently grew enough hay for our shared herd, and eventually I sold enough organic barley to my DC neighborhood food store. We sold several grass-fed beeves to local buyers, and I sold about 50 cords of firewood to people that I knew in DC. The farm is only a memory now, but I'm deeply grateful for my experience working with Mother Nature on my own interdependent web of all life: land, animals, tasks, and people.
Nechung Rinpoche, a Tibetan Buddhist abbot, provides a different way of thinking about being mothered on this Mother's Day Sunday. In the Buddhist understanding of time, each of us has been continually passing through incarnation after incarnation, inhabiting one life and then another, since the beginning of time. Rinpoche suggests that because this cycling through life after life has gone on for so long, we've experienced every possible relationship combination with the people around us, which means that everyone you meet at some point has been your mother. Take a moment now to send love to those who have mothered you. If this Mother's Day finds you grieving, missing your mom, if it finds you grateful for the experience of motherhood and mothering, or exhausted and burnt out, whatever experiences of being mothered and mothering you bring, may you feel held by this community. Whatever personal struggle you carry with you this morning, whatever joy or celebration, may you feel held by this community. We remain deeply grateful for the payments you are making on your pledges for the additional contributions you're making as you would have on a Sunday morning through our electronic giving portals. Thank you so much for sustaining this community and making everything we do together possible. As we get ready to part ways, I leave you with these words from the botanist Robin Wall Kimmerer, from her book Braiding Sweetgrass: Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. Kimmerer writes, "Maybe it was the smell of ripe tomatoes, or the oriole singing, or that certain slant of light on a yellow afternoon and the beams hanging thick around me. It just came to me in a wash of happiness that made me laugh out loud, startling the chickadees who were picking at the sunflowers raining black and white hulls on the ground. I knew it with a certainty as warm and clear as the September sunshine. The land loves us back. She loves us with beans and tomatoes, with roasting ears and blackberries and bird songs, by a shower of gifts and a heavy rain of lessons. Mother Earth provides for us and teaches us to provide for ourselves, as loving mothers do. Be well and reach out when you need us.